Well, next week's discussions come amid rising tensions between the US and South Africa on Trump's controversial remarks on white genocide here in South Africa, as well as ongoing debates over land reform policies. Lwazi Somya is a senior researcher at the Southern African Liaison Office, or SALO, and he joins us to also further unpack this. Lwazi, it's so great to have you with us. Good afternoon. So I'm sure you heard my previous interview, but let's be very direct. I want us to talk about the usage of the word genocide, especially from the US, who are currently aiding Israel in their war in Gaza. Is this not hypocritical of them?
It is hypocritical. Thank you so much for inviting me, and good afternoon too, and I hope you had a fantastic day. Well, it is hypocritical for the Trump administration to highlight that South Africa is continuing to have a genocide, so-called genocide on white Afrikaners. However, we have to analyze what does this achieve for the Donald Trump administration. Primarily, what does this achieve amongst his domestic constituents? So when you highlight the issue around Donald Trump's candidacy within the United States, especially as American president, he pushed a narrative that is highly based on this white male Presbyterian analysis of the world, especially highlighting that America is losing grip around the world, which is also highlighted in the shrinking demographics of our white males within the United States, and along with shrinking demographics around white males in Europe too. So this is a message that's generated towards a particular constituency, both domestically and internationally. However, South Africa now is at loggerheads on the basis, as previously highlighted, of South Africa's ICJ application against the state of Israel, on the basis that he has foreign policy disagreements, and on the basis that South Africa is a member of BRICS. But fundamentally, Donald Trump is trying to set an example, utilizing South Africa as a means towards showing his domestic constituents that America is willing to show its strength in the international community. However, there's growing pressure within Donald Trump's domestic sphere, especially as the US population is seeking to have more and more trade deals as an outcome of these tariffs. And therefore, this is a window of opportunity for President Cyril Ramaphosa to go in there and engage in a very constructive manner concerning South Africa's relationship with the United States. We are beginning to see a reset of the United States foreign policy from being the one that determines the rights and the values world order to one that is very transactional. For us as Africa, this stands as a potential danger, as it might undermine the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, along with bilateral agreements that exist within the African continent, and especially within the SADC region, on what impacts do bilateral agreements with the United States have on institutions such as the Southern African Customs Union, and what impact will it have on our neighbors if South Africa goes at it alone.
I mean, and that's just the question, right, Lwazi? Because what then is the geopolitical implications and impact on South Africa with these utterances from Donald Trump? Then have been, by the way, on multiple platforms, news outlets and agencies, even from the States, dispelling this usage of the word white farmer genocide as if there's any genocide, particularly here in the country in South Africa.
Well, as you've seen since Donald Trump's first term, where the notion of alternative facts was created by his first administration, we are now dealing with a world where truth does not matter anymore, but hard gains are the currency in international relations. But however, what we've seen now is that Donald Trump's lies about South Africa have not carried traction even amongst his allies. So you saw the situation when South Africa hosted the European Union earlier on this year. We were able to make a number of trade deals with the European Union, fully realizing the current situation with South Africa and the need for international cooperation. So as the United States is retreating from the international order, it is important for South Africa to seek allies in both the West and the East, and even in the global North and South, in order for us to protect the current international order and the human rights basis of the international system. Even though it is very problematic in its inactions, but an international order without institutions creates an an international order that's anarchic, and therefore South Africa, with this show at the White House, they will have to be very strategic in its handling of Donald Trump, primarily not to be perceived as antagonistic, but at the same time standing firm on constitutional values and also the truth.
And Lwazi, I mean, in broader terms, then, how do you think, how should our president, or let's say our team that will be dispatched alongside with the president, actually deal with this manner when they do meet with Trump? And sentiments are that Trump is aware that there is no genocide in South Africa. We've seen in the post, and we've just had multiple conversations about the fact that this notion has been disproven on multiple platforms and levels.
So there are a number of ways South Africa can approach this. The first one now is through bilateral engagements with the United States and their counterparts. This is very important as to set up the establishing and foundational basis for dialogue going forward between South Africa and the United States. And from then onwards, then ongoing dialogue between the United States and South Africa will be very critical in actually ironing out misleading statements made by the United States counterparts. Part and parcel of this, South Africa, parallel to this, should be seeking broader global solidarity, especially leading up to the G20. South Africa needs to engage with the United States. It's one of our top trade partners internationally. But we also need to engage with the United States, and it forms part of the G20 Troika. In order for us to have a very successful G20, we need to be able to push forward our agenda for future G20s, whether it's with the United States or not, preferably it was with the United States. Mm-hmm. But in this instance, President Cyril Ramaphosa, as the negotiator, historically being him, will have to charter the waters very carefully. However, with the team that he's set up, along with the backing of the Director Generals in the various departments, South Africa has sent a very strong delegation to set the foundations to future dialogue that will ultimately result in some form of normalization of relations with the United States. And if not, we'll have to go back to the drawing board.
I mean, talking on that normalization of relations with the United States, Lwazi, I mean, we do know that a dent in our sovereignty or, I suppose, in our image, we've already suffered that through the fact that, of course, the Trump administration has already expedited those 49 white Afrikaners to go to the United States. So I'm just wondering, from your point of view, shouldn't this be a point of of reasoning for the two presidents to say, okay, then, if South Africa does succeed in convincing the Trump administration about the fact that he's totally misinformed about what he's been saying, should President Cyril Ramaphosa then turn around and say, well, may I please bring back my 49 white Afrikaner farmers back with me to South Africa?
Absolutely not. What is fundamental for President Cyril Ramaphosa to communicate to Donald Trump is, number one, his message is totally off. And if he wanted to have Afrikaners as tourists in America, there's a better way of doing this. Number two, the mere fact that Donald Trump has gone on this escapade himself concerning this misinformation, also bolstered by Elon Musk, is a very, very sticking point, especially concerning Mr. Musk's relationship with South Africa and his interest of having Starlink being in South Africa. So some of the concessions, or whether or not there will be any concessions made by the South African government, will have to take into consideration whether or not we are impeding on not only our sovereignty, but also our constitutional values. So if the South African government decides we need to review the Expropriation Act, South Africa will be merely perceived as a vassal state for the United States or clientele state for the United States, and therefore that will bring an end to the legitimacy of the current government. However, if South Africa stands firm on the constitutional basis, and which I suspect they will do, and along with standing firm on the truth and negotiating from a position of dignity, and therefore South Africa then can get the outcomes that it can attain and begin the process of normalization of relations with the United States. We've seen this a bluster from Donald Trump before. Then after face-to-face meetings, he calms down and then normalizes relations. We've seen it with Canada and now with Iran, as he's trying to strike up a nuclear deal with Iran. But hopefully, President Ramaphosa and the diplomats entrusted with this and the delegation sent to Washington will be able to finesse and discuss the future trade relationship and bilateral relationship between South Africa and the United States.
Absolutely, Lwazi. Let's hope everyone on that table, especially the Trump administration, will be negotiating on the basis of dignity. Lwazi Somya is a senior researcher at the Southern African Liaison Office. They're also weighing in on the geopolitical implications of course, the genocidal word or the usage of the word genocide by Trump pertaining to South Africa.